what we've heard over the past 48 hours is a political and cultural exposition of where Bengal is and where it needs to be. One of the key missions that India and the government have embarked on at this time is the idea of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. In that, how can East India move towards becoming Atmanirbhar? To talk about this, we are joined at the India Today conclave at this time by the chairperson of the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, Mr. Sanjeev Goenka. Mr. Goenka, welcome and thank you so much for joining us at the India Today conclave. It's great to have you with us.
Hi Rahul, it's always great, it's always an honor to participate at the India Today conclave. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for joining us. So, you're a very sharp and astute thinker, and I want to use the time that we have to draw you out on what you believe are the issues that the state of West Bengal face at this moment, which you would like resolved or worked on when it comes to politics, when it comes to governance, when it comes to administration, for West Bengal to be one of the key drivers of the India growth story?
Well, I think the first thing I'd like to say is that West Bengal is part of a country. It's part of a whole. And as far as the national policy is concerned, we really can't ask for more. We've had an outstanding budget. We've had an outstanding policy announcement time and again by the Prime Minister, by the Home Minister, by the Finance Minister. Just a couple of days ago, you saw the tweet by the Prime Minister hailing entrepreneurs and saying that the nation needs them. And I think Bengal is part of that. I'm on record to say that after this budget, frankly, every budget we went and said, Dil mange more. This time we are saying, there is not more that we can ask for. It's now for us to perform. It's for us to actually become more competitive, to scale up, to invest in capacity, in research, in services, and actually go forward.
So one of the key challenges facing the Indian economy over the last several years has been the lack of appetite on the part of India Inc. to want to invest in the India story. So overcapacity, lack of adequate demand has impeded, new greenfield projects from coming up. To what extent do you think capacity utilization has reached a level where entrepreneurs such as you feel confident about making significant big ticket investment? The government is focusing on public investments in infrastructure. When will private sector start, making outlays for fresh investment?
Well, I can say that as far as we are concerned, we've already started looking at investments. We've just announced a major chemical factory, a carbon black factory in Tamil Nadu, which will be a completely robotized plant, completely automated, completely state-of-the-art. We are thinking of adding capacity in distribution and power. We have bid for one of the union territories recently. We are looking at others. So I think we are looking at investment in a very big way. We are adding to our FMCG portfolio. We are adding to our FMCG capacity. We've just made an acquisition in the IT-enabled services space. And I think we are very, very positive on the Indian economy, on the India story, and we are investing strongly in India.
So we hear from government ministers, we hear from bureaucrats, we hear from economists on their view on the bounce back in the economy. How deep is it? How certain is it? How much momentum it has? As somebody who's on the inside, what's your assessment at this moment about the extent to which we've been able to bounce back, and how sustained do you believe the recovery is?
Quite honestly, for us as a company, as a group of companies, the last quarter has been the best quarter in our history ever. We've never seen sales like this. We've not seen profits like this. This quarter seems pretty much the same. And the first quarter of the next financial also seems pretty much the same. So to my mind, it is a completely, the bounce back is for real, it's definite, and it appears it is here to stay.
Let's spend a moment talking about Make in India, because on Make in India, there are two perspectives, Mr. Goenka. One is that, this is a good idea that we need to encourage and incentivize manufacturing in India. The other is that we are creating artificial walls and barriers, and this is a throwback to the demands made by the Bombay Club, which at that time in the early 90s were rejected, and India grew, and thank God for it as a consequence, that India cannot grow without integrating further with the global economy, and the Make in India concept goes against that. How do you see this debate?
I think Make in India is very important if India has to emerge as a manufacturing hub. And quite honestly, if you look at other countries, almost all countries are imposing tariff barriers in one name or another. And frankly, India has very little, if any, in terms of tariff barriers. So I don't really feel that we are putting ourselves in a privileged position. And frankly, if we did, we did.
What more do you need to see to ensure that Make in India becomes a success? Because one of the complaints we constantly hear is that while ease of doing business is spoken of as a key policy thrust, on the ground, and outside of the rankings that come, it hasn't necessarily become much easier to do business in India. What would you like to see for it to become genuinely easy for entrepreneurs like you to be able to operate in India?
I think sometimes you have situations where state governments start imposing different kinds of controls. Different states do different kinds of controls. If something is de-licensed, then it is de-licensed. If you've entered into a contract, then honor it. You've had a situation where in renewable power, certain state governments have dishonored or wanted to dishonor contracts which have already been entered. So sanctity of contracts, sanctity of commitments, sanctity of licensing, to my mind, this is very important. And this is going to be the next big step in terms of getting complete confidence, in terms of going ahead. We have great confidence. We are investing. But some state governments are actually sort of deviating.
Now let's spend a moment talking about the enforceability of contracts, because we've seen, and I don't want to get into one instance or the other, governments renege. Let's assume the previous government did something, the new government comes in, they don't like what's been done in the past, they start probing, and very often we've got international investors involved, and that really, while it's a political battle in that state, but per se for India it gives us a bad name. What do you think should be done to improve the enforceability of contracts in the context of this being a political bait for whichever party comes to power? It's a very natural thing for that government to want to do because it gets them the opportunity to show the opponent down.
I think in a way we should divorce the politics and the economics from decision making. So if you've entered a contract, unless you have a significant reason, so say किसी ने चोरी की है और चोरी के बल पे वो कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लिया है, तो आप रिविजिट कर रहे हो, एक बात है, but you're revisiting it or you're reneging on it just because a previous government has done it. I think we need continuity of commitments, of contracts for the tenure of the period mentioned in the contract.
As one of the most important corporate players in East India, what according to you should be the agenda for the forthcoming assembly election in West Bengal. So we see multiple themes play out, in terms of religion, in terms of governance. What would you like netas? I'm not saying one party or the other. What do you think should be really the issues politicians and parties should be focusing on? What would you like to see the election being fought around?
I was taught one thing when I was young. Stick to your knitting. Stick to what you do well. I run my businesses well. I'm not in politics. I don't understand politics. So for me, it's best to stay away from that.
You've very smartly dodged and ducked the question, which is a wise thing. But I'm actually talking about a different thing. I'm saying in terms of, let's assume that you were to work on laying out a new agenda for governance in the state of West Bengal. For example, making Bengal as it used to be many decades ago, one of the industrial hubs of India, key industrial hub of India. How do you think, whichever government comes to power, and this is completely politically agnostic, should that piece be addressed?
I think Bengal suffered from, in the left rule, in the 34 years of the left rule, Bengal suffered from a huge image erosion. So to my mind, one of the biggest things for any government is to take that perception back. I think the image has improved partially, but Maharashtra or Gujarat may have a better image. Gujarat certainly is a great place to invest in. Maharashtra is a great place to invest in. I invest heavily in Bengal, and Bengal for me is a great place to invest in. But I think it's also about how people perceive it.
No, so how should that be changed? What needs to be done to change the perception around Bengal? Where, for example, Bibek Debroy was here at the India Today conclave and he spoke of the flight of human capital from Bengal. He spoke of how earlier he used to think of himself as a victim, but ultimately he proved to be a beneficiary of the flight of human capital. How do you go about ensuring that the smartest young Bengalis actually stay back in Bengal to work on the development in Bengal, and they don't feel that their careers and their lives are better served by being outside the state?
I think it's not only about Bengalis staying in Bengal. I think we are one country. So it's about really trying and getting whatever appropriate talent for whatever job is required. You get the best that's possible. And you should aim to get that and try and attract the best talent. So if you don't have the right atmosphere, you will not have the right talent. If you have the right atmosphere, you'll have the right talent.
Let's spend a minute discussing the challenge of employment. In a country like India, given the population that we have and given how automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning are coming and disrupting the job market, how should corporates and government and society address the issue of creating employment for those who are entering the workforce at this time?
Once the investment cycle starts, once you're seeing capacities being created, jobs will automatically flow. It's a natural corollary. So I think we are very influenced by what's happened during the pandemic period. But give it 6 months, give it 9 months, and you will see that the whole cycle of the job market would have changed.
Let's spend time talking about skilling. How do you think we should address the challenge of creating skills which ensure that our working population is equipped to deal with how, especially in a post-pandemic scenario, the requirements of the workforce are changing?
So I think skilling is what corporate world calls training. Skilling is paramount. Training is paramount. And reinvention is paramount. You have to adapt to the new changes that are required. So for example, in our retail business, during the pandemic, we discovered that people wanted home delivery. So it was not just e-commerce, that was one part of it. They wanted home delivery. And we started that to begin with in Gurgaon and Bombay. And within this period, it's grown to be a multi-hundred crore area for us. Now, it's about skilling your people, it's about training your people to make sure that they can do this. It's about responding to how your customer wants a situation. So it's about just being nimble, and this puts a greater onus on HR departments in each of the companies. And I think it's so important because customers are becoming very, very demanding.
So of all the various sectors where you have interests in operations, where do you believe growth in the future lies? We've seen, for example, some of the biggest companies in India, like the Reliance Group, transform themselves around data, around technology, around mobile telephony. How do you see that play out in the context of your own concern?
Frankly, technology becomes a necessity. You have to keep abreast of technology. We believe we've got to be the most efficient, or if not the most efficient, at least in the top two in terms of efficiency in every sector that we operate in. That's what we are striving to do. That's what we've targeted to do. That's what we've so far achieved. Now the trick or the success is going to be in keeping ahead of the race. So you have to invest in not only tech as in tech, but tech as in technology, as in knowledge, as in research, as in reinvention. So we are doing this in a big way. So even in our staid chemical business, we've got patents, or we've applied for patents for several products. We've got a full new research facility in Gujarat. We've got a new research facility which started during the pandemic in Belgium. It's about actually investing for the future, investing in products which are value added for the future, services which are value added for the future.
This has been a fascinating conversation, and we've had an opportunity to hear from you on how you see skilling change, how you see the economic environment change, and we want to thank you for your time and wish you all the best, Mr. Goenka, for the next several months in terms of how the economy bounces back and where India Inc. is able to take the India story. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
at
Rahul.
the India
Thank you for
Conference.
having me.
Thank you.